In today's video, we're taking a look at the Detroit Red Wings. Could they possibly target Steve Yzerman's former team with the form of an offer sheet? The Anaheim Ducks have yet to answer their backup goaltending situation. Could they turn to one of their youngsters and top prospects tearing it up in Europe? Could Ilya Kovalchuk return to the Montreal Canadiens? And we also have some sad news with a couple of legends passing away, which I wanted to talk about quickly as well. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, before we jump into today's NHL news and rumors from around the league, I just want to touch on quickly here. The NHL and the world in general lost a couple of legends today. We lost Howie Meeker at age 97, who was one of the broadcasting icons, longtime NHL player, had to retire fairly early though, to the age of 30, but still had a lot of success, including winning the Calder Trophy, multiple Stanley Cups with the Maple Leafs, and instead became a broadcasting legend, which many of us grew up listening to for a long time. So certainly I want to offer my condolences to his family. A big loss for the hockey community for sure. And of course, Jeopardy host Alex Trebek also passed away today at the age of 80. A long-time hockey fan himself, was a major fan. I know often cheered for a lot of the Canadian teams, went to the University of Ottawa, and most recently made an appearance for the Ottawa Senators at the 2020 NHL Draft. Of course, the draft was held virtually, but they filmed a segment ahead of time where they used Alex Trebek to announce the number 3 overall selection, which was really a solid piece of video work there, which many of us really enjoyed. Of course, Trebek had been battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer for I think it was about a year and a half, and he vowed to fight and keep on working, and worked right up here until the end of it. Certainly an inspiration, a true legend, and even though he wasn't directly involved with hockey, he was a huge hockey fan, and was one of the type of guys really loved around the world. So originally from Canada, but he did become a U.S. citizen back, I think somewhere around in the early 2000s. I can't remember exactly what year that was, but either way, somebody who has been around the hockey world for a long time, and certainly the world's going to miss those two gentlemen. So certainly condolences to both of their families. Now, jumping into today's news and rumors. First up, I want to take a look at the possibility of Ilya Kovalchuk returning to the Montreal Canadiens. Now, yesterday we talked about the possibility of the Habs maybe targeting a different NHL veteran in the form of Corey Perry, of course, formerly of the Dallas Stars, now who's yet to sign anywhere this offseason, coming off a one-year, $1 million contract with the Stars. Didn't have a great regular season, but had a great solid postseason, and still remains out there. But the Habs could turn to someone they're more familiar with, and that's Ilya Kovalchuk, who, again, is out there like Corey Perry. And I would think that based on everything we've heard about Kovalchuk, it sounds like some of these guys, including him, are waiting for them, other teams that they're talking to maybe clear some space. And if you look at the Habs and everything they've done, they have well under $1 million in cap space. And I would think that Kovalchuk likely would sign a short-term contract, maybe 1 year, $1 million. He said that he really enjoyed his time in Montreal. That Montreal is an iconic place to play, and seemed to be in a little bit of a verbal handshake agreement with Marc Bergevin. At least that's what many of us thought, that even though they traded him at the deadline, that he would return in the offseason. But of course, they probably, if they did have conversations, were probably advised to wait and see what other moves they had to make first, see what they had left for cap space before they really get into a contract. The Habs would have to find a small amount of space to bring him in, but they've been linked to, like I said, not only him, but another veteran as well. And this the talk to Bergevin isn't completely done, even though he's made several moves this offseason. It'd just be that one more tip of the scale here to add an extra veteran here. And obviously Kovalchuk, we saw him do quite well in Montreal before last year, so certainly a possibility. There's still a lot of talk that they could be having conversations, and they are one of the teams in the mix, but hard to say. There hasn't been a lot of firm, definitive answers on many UFAs. It's been a few days now since we've had any signings in that regard. Most of the signings lately have been RFAs with arbitration rights. Now that that's all over, teams will now turn more of a focus to UFAs and the other RFAs that don't have arbitration rights yet. So we'll see if the Habs do indeed add a veteran, but I would imagine if they do, it's going to be Kovalchuk or possibly Perry, like I mentioned yesterday. Now, the other thing I want to talk about as well, one of the items here was the Red Wings. Could we see them haul out an offer sheet? We did a lot of talk about the Devils being the main team to look for if an offer sheet were to happen, but could Steve Yzerman and the Detroit Red Wings be one of those clubs to do it as well? I mean, they are well positioned to do it. He has about $9.5 million in cap space. They have a lot of picks lined up. They have, between the first 3 rounds of the 2021 draft, they have 6 selections, including multiple second and third round picks. So that's obviously good. I mean, if they wanted to go the route of an offer sheet, I don't think that we'd be looking at doing like the highest one where they're going to do 4 first-round picks as compensation. Even if you come down one step from that, you're looking at 1 first-round pick and multiple second and third rounders involved. So ideally, it's something that the Red Wings could really afford to do. It doesn't mean they're going to do it, but there's been a lot of talk that they're still looking to add maybe one more move. And that move very well could be something substantial or could be something, fairly minor. But either way, another addition through free agency or trade seems quite likely for Yzerman and the Red Wings. Now, when you look into his former team, the Tampa, a team that he knows extremely well, you can't help but wonder, would he consider offer-sheeting one of those players like an Anthony Cirelli being probably the prime target in that scenario, or possibly even Mikhail Sergachev, I guess, as well. You can't discount him being a really solid defenseman, but obviously, in the case of Yzerman, if you look at what they have on the Red Wings, I mean, adding a guy like Cirelli would be an absolutely huge pickup. And there was a lot of rumors before that the Lightning and Red Wings could be doing some business kind of behind the scenes where the Lightning might end up having to send a player or two to Detroit. They get signed and then maybe at a later time transfer or trade it back with some salary retained to kind of even things out. Now, obviously, if they go the route of an offer sheet or trade, then there's going to be compensation going both ways. But as far as Yzerman goes, there was talk of this in the Toronto Star, and there was maybe the talk and the thought maybe Yzerman has too much respect for his former team to really target them and hurt them in any kind of way like that after all the time he spent there. Obviously, he knows those players very well. And I would think if any of the Lightning players were to consider making that kind of move, that Detroit might be one of the few places they would consider going to work again for Steve Yzerman, who they all have a lot of respect for and know incredibly well. So I would not rule out Detroit going this road, but it may not necessarily be Tampa, even though there's a lot of reasons you could look at it on paper here and say, you know what, it makes a lot of sense. They're a team that's rebuilding. Adding a solid young player of that magnitude would be absolutely huge for them. They're well positioned to offer the compensation that's necessary, and if they wanted to, consider the offer sheet, they very well might be able to talk them into a trade that might even work out to be, a better package deal than just draft picks. Maybe they could offer something off the roster as well. So either way, I think the Red Wings are primed for this, but it doesn't mean they're going to target Yzerman's old team. If you look around the NHL, there's a few other teams that are certainly in that predicament that could be susceptible to one as well. Primarily the New York Islanders, but I'm not sure they're going to be targeting Matthew Barzal either. You never know, it's possible, but at this point we don't have any information to suggest that's the case. But I did come across an article, like I said, talking about the Red Wings maybe targeting the Tampa Bay Lightning, and would they consider doing that, or does Yzerman just have too much respect for his former team? So we'll see what happens, but they're certainly a team that I would consider watching out for because they're one of the few teams that are well positioned to make that kind of move. Now, as I mentioned as well, I want to talk about the Anaheim Ducks. They're one of the few teams here that don't really have their goaltending situation completely ironed out. Now, they have not signed anybody to be officially the backup goaltender for the coming season. Now, of course, when it comes to starting goaltenders, they're in great position here with, John Gibson being one of the better NHL goalies. So they're well positioned that way. He signed long term. Of course, they've had Ryan Miller, longtime NHL veteran. It wasn't really clear at the end of the season if they wanted to bring him back, if he was going to continue playing. I know both sides kind of indicated they weren't going to completely rule it out, but weren't really committed to it either. And at this point, nothing has really happened. Now, if you look around the NHL goalie landscape, as we talked about a lot heading into free agency, we were going to have a bit of a goaltending carousel between goalies that were free agents that were expected to move to other teams and goalies that were expected to be traded. And pretty well majority of what we talked about did indeed happen. And there's not too much left here on the open market anymore. I mean, if you look around the NHL, there's only a handful of NHL goalies that have experience that they could consider, and I'm not sure that any of them really are a great fit. I mean, you've got Craig Anderson, formerly of Ottawa, but I'm not really sure he's going to head out west and uproot his family for a short-term stint in Anaheim. You get Jimmy Howard, who's a longtime member of the Red Wings, who's not going back there. I mean, maybe he wants to go to the Ducks for a season. I know he's expressed desire to keep playing, so that might be a possibility. Of course, you get Ryan Miller himself, who maybe they agree to bring back on a one-year deal, or maybe they're really happy with what they've seen from one of their top prospects, and that's goaltender Lukas Dostal of the Czech Republic, who's been playing in Liga during this, certainly during this NHL shutdown right now. And he's doing phenomenal over there right now. He's got a goals against average so far, even though it's been a short season. Just over 1.5 goals a game. A save percentage getting close to .950. Like, he's been playing amazing. And I've had this guy pegged as being one of the top goalie prospects outside of the NHL really ever since he's been drafted. Of course, he's had great performances on the international stage on multiple occasions, and really I think he has a long-term, really solid NHL potential. I can see him being, at the very least, a good backup, maybe even a starting goaltender. It's a little early to judge exactly what he's going to be at the NHL level, but the way he's played this year and what we've seen previously since he was drafted and even leading into the draft, I can't help but wonder if maybe, even though he's young, could they consider going that route here as early as the coming season? I mean, obviously he will be invited to training camp, and maybe they make a decision once that gets underway. Maybe they hold things off, don't bring in a veteran guy here just yet, and perhaps they go down that road and maybe grab somebody if they feel like it's better off to let him play over in Europe for the rest of the year. Now, of course, Dostal, like I said, is one of their top prospects. Kind of flies under the radar here a little bit, given all the other guys that they've drafted. Like, obviously, they got Jamie Drysdale in the first round of this year. You know, we have lots of other top players that are working their way into the system, like Sam Steele and Max Comtois, Trevor Zegras, Max Jones, etc. So, you know, obviously, they've got lots of guys that kind of tend to steal more of the spotlight. But Dostal is a player certainly I would not sleep on. It could be a big star for them in the short term. So we may not see the Ducks actually go out and sign anybody. It's a situation we're going to have to monitor, but I would not be shocked here if maybe they bring in a veteran just to compete with him in training camp. But this guy has been tearing it up in Europe, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets himself an NHL opportunity as early as this season, even though he's still quite young. Let me know your thoughts on Lukas Dostal's long-term potential here in the NHL, and do you see the Ducks giving him an opportunity or bringing in a veteran like I mentioned, because there's not much out there to possibly be a one-year filler as he continues to develop. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.